Close your eyes for a moment and imagine an Earth you would never recognize. No trees, no grass, no blue skies as we know them. The oceans shimmered not with emerald waves, but with haunting purple light. The very air carried the scent of creation, strange, chemical, electric. Billions of years before a single leaf turned green, this world glowed in colors no human eye has ever seen. A violet planet, alive, breathing, shimmering, a living alien world we once called home. On this Earth, the first architects of life were not majestic beasts, but invisible warriors, microscopic organisms that painted the seas in royal purples and deep scarlets. Before forests whispered, before birds ever flew, this was their kingdom. And somewhere, deep beneath those purple tides, the secret spark of everything we are was born. So tonight we journey back, not to the age of dinosaurs, not even to the dawn of mammals, but to an era so ancient, so otherworldly, that it almost defies imagination, the time when Earth was purple. And before we dive into this mind-blowing history of color, life, and mystery, make sure you subscribe, hit that like, and drop a comment below on what color you imagine Earth truly was before us, because what you're about to see isn't just history, it's the forgotten beginning of our story. Billions of years ago, long before the first leaf unfurled or the first animal took a breath, the Earth was a completely different place. There were no trees, no grass, no blue oceans as we know them. The planet's face shimmered with alien hues, its waters gleaming not with emerald reflections, but deep, haunting purples. And the architects of this surreal beauty were not mighty beings or mythic gods, but tiny, invisible organisms, the earliest life forms that would one day make all others possible. These were the purple bacteria, the unsung creators of Earth's first true ecosystem. These microscopic pioneers didn't rely on the same chemistry that modern plants use to capture sunlight. Instead, they had their own unique trick, a pigment called retinal. This simple molecule, strikingly similar to the compound in human eyes that detects light, allowed them to harvest the sun's energy in a very different way, where plants use chlorophyll to absorb red and blue wavelengths of light reflecting green. These early microbes absorbed the green light and reflected red and violet, giving the oceans their eerie alien glow. Imagine standing on the shores of an ancient sea where the sunlight shimmered through a violet mist, and the waves themselves seemed to pulse with deep, royal color that was Earth in its earliest days. At that time, oxygen was nearly non-existent. The atmosphere was thick with methane, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen. The skies were hazy and dim, filtering sunlight into strange reddish tones. Yet, in that seemingly lifeless world, these tiny purple cells flourished, feeding off light and chemical reactions, reproducing endlessly in the warm, shallow waters of primordial Earth. In their microscopic realms, they ruled absolutely, the planet's first and only living monarchs. Every ripple in the tide carried billions of them, transforming the planet into a living, breathing sphere of violet radiance. It's difficult to imagine now, but these purple microbes might have covered vast stretches of the oceans, forming slick mats across the surface like living paint. From above, our planet could have looked completely different from the lush green marble we see today. Instead, a glowing amethyst orb drifting through the dark void of space. To an alien observer, it might have seemed like a world made entirely of crystal light. But beneath this beauty was a quiet revolution, one that would eventually alter the course of all existence. For millions of years, these purple bacteria reigned undisturbed. Their energy process was simple but efficient, their pigments perfectly tuned to a young sun that shone slightly dimmer than it does now. Yet evolution never rests. Somewhere in the depths of ancient waters, another kind of microbe appeared, one that had discovered an even more powerful pigment, chlorophyll. This pigment absorbed sunlight differently, focusing on red and blue wavelengths and reflecting green. It was more efficient, more adaptable, and capable of releasing oxygen as a byproduct, a gas that would change the entire planet. But before that green revolution took over, the Purple Age was the Earth's first great era of life. It was a world both fragile and fierce, an alien Earth glowing under a young, red-tinted sun, its air thick with vapor, its seas alive with endless microscopic color. These tiny organisms unknowingly laid the foundation for everything that would come later. They built the first link in the long, unbroken chain of life that would lead to plants, animals, and eventually humans. Even today, descendants of these ancient purple microbes still exist, hiding in salt lakes, deep sea vents, and hot springs, surviving where few others can. They are living fossils, silent reminders of that forgotten world. When scientists study them under microscopes, they aren't just looking at bacteria, they're peering through time into the very origins of life on Earth. The Purple Earth wasn't just a fantasy, it was real, it was alive, and it was the first chapter of the story that eventually became us. The thought alone reshapes how we see our planet. We tend to think of life before humans as dinosaurs or mammoths, but the true beginning is far older, far smaller, and far stranger. Once, this entire world glowed in color we can barely imagine, a cosmic experiment unfolding quietly beneath an alien sky. And in that silence, the first spark of life found its rhythm. The world turned purple and the universe for the first time began to breathe. In the deep past, when the Earth was still young and wild, sunlight struck its surface differently. The skies were tinted with strange gases, the oceans shimmered with alien light, and the surface of the planet radiated with colors no human eye has ever truly seen. This was an era when life was microscopic yet magnificent, when the world itself seemed to glow. At the heart of this otherworldly beauty was a phenomenon both simple and extraordinary. The way early life absorbed and reflected light. These tiny organisms, the purple microbes of ancient Earth, lived in a realm bathed not in green but in violet and crimson. Their world was drenched in colors that danced across the seas like the reflections of another planet. The secret behind this alien glow lay in how these primitive life forms harnessed the power of the sun. Modern plants and algae use chlorophyll, a pigment that absorbs red and blue wavelengths of sunlight, reflecting the green that gives our world its familiar hue. But these early microbial ancestors had no chlorophyll. Instead, they relied on a pigment called retinal, a light-sensitive molecule that worked in a completely different way. Retinal absorbed green light rather than red or blue, which meant that what it didn't use, it reflected. The result, the seas of the ancient Earth shone with the shimmering colors of magenta, violet, and red. To visualize this world is to imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean under a dim, coppery sky. The water is calm but luminous, as if glowing from within. Each wave carries a gentle pulse of purple radiance, a living light created by countless microbes just beneath the surface. The light filters through the atmosphere, scattering across the horizon in a soft, surreal glow. It's a scene that feels more like an alien planet from a distant galaxy than our own home world. But this was Earth. Nearly 4 billion years ago, these purple microorganisms were masters of survival in a world that was anything but gentle. The young Earth was bombarded by ultraviolet radiation, lashed by violent storms and heated by constant volcanic eruptions. Yet these microbes found a way to thrive. Their retinal-based photosynthesis allowed them to capture the green wavelengths of sunlight that streamed through the murky waters, turning that energy into life. It was a process that didn't produce oxygen like modern plants do, but it sustained these early organisms in a time when oxygen would have been toxic. The irony is striking. The very gas that all complex life now depends on would have killed these purple ancestors instantly. For millions of years, these radiant creatures dominated the planet's seas. They covered shallow shorelines, thrived in salt-rich lakes, and filled the upper layers of ancient oceans with their luminous presence. The light they reflected back into space would have given Earth a violet sheen, a glowing sphere that looked nothing like the blue and green marble we know today. If an alien civilization had looked toward our solar system in those distant ages, they might have seen a world unlike any other, a purple planet, softly glimmering under the light of a young sun. Scientists today call this idea the purple Earth hypothesis, and it's not just poetic speculation. Evidence for these retinal-based organisms still exists in the genes of modern microbes. Certain halobacteria, for example, still use retinal to convert light into energy, thriving in salty environments that resemble the early conditions of Earth. These microbes are like living memories, microscopic fossils that keep the secret of that ancient violet world alive. When modern astronomers search the cosmos for signs of life, they now consider this forgotten era of Earth's history as a possible clue. Not every planet that harbors life will be green. Some might glow in purples or reds, depending on what pigments their life forms use to absorb light from their suns. Our own history shows that a planet doesn't need green forests or blue oceans to be alive. It only needs chemistry, sunlight, and time. The idea that the first living world glowed in purple light changes how we see everything. It reminds us that life, in all its infinite creativity, doesn't follow one color or one rule. It adapts, experiments, and evolves in ways that defy imagination. The light that once shimmered across those ancient oceans was not just the reflection of microbes. It was the first heartbeat of a living planet. It was the dawn of biology, the moment when matter first began to play with sunlight. In that alien radiance, the Earth found its pulse. The air was thin, the sky strange, but the world was alive with color, an endless sea of microscopic light. The purple glow that once covered our planet was not just a trick of chemistry. It was the spark of creation itself, whispering across the waves of time long before a single human eye ever opened to see it. For countless eons, Earth's purple world thrived in silence. The oceans glimmered under a dim sun, alive with the soft glow of microscopic life that painted the waters in deep violet and crimson hues. It was a world ruled by the ancient purple bacteria, those invisible architects that transformed light into life using their pigment called retinal. But like all rulers in the story of time, their reign was destined to end. From within the same ancient seas that birthed them, a quiet revolution began, one that would forever change the face of the planet. Somewhere, deep in the microbial mats of Earth's early oceans, a new kind of life was stirring. These new organisms had discovered a pigment unlike any before: chlorophyll. It was more efficient, more powerful, and capable of absorbing different parts of sunlight, specifically the red and blue wavelengths that the purple bacteria could not use. This small evolutionary leap would turn into one of the greatest transformations in Earth's history. The dominance of the purple world began to fade, and in its place, a new age was dawning, an age of green. At first, the change was subtle. In the shallows, the purple hue that once shimmered beneath the surface began to dull, replaced by faint patches of emerald where the new bacteria took hold. These newcomers, known as cyanobacteria, didn't just compete for light, they used it to perform an extraordinary chemical trick. They could take carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight and turn them into sugar for energy, and in the process, they released oxygen. It was the first time in Earth's history that oxygen began to accumulate in the atmosphere. This single innovation, oxygenic photosynthesis, was one of the most profound turning points in the story of our planet. Oxygen, at that time, was a deadly poison to most existing life forms. For the purple bacteria that had thrived for millions of years, it was catastrophic. The very air and water that once nurtured them now turned hostile. Their era of dominance was collapsing, replaced by a world they could no longer survive in. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It took millions of years, but slowly, the oxygen produced by cyanobacteria began to fill the oceans and atmosphere. Iron dissolved in seawater reacted with this new gas, rusting into reddish-brown sediments that would one day form the planet's ancient iron ore deposits, silent geological witnesses to the greatest environmental shift Earth had ever seen. The skies, once choked with methane and haze, began to clear and sunlight reached the surface more directly than ever before. The world's palette was changing from the purples of the old to the greens and blues of the new. As the purple bacteria retreated into extreme environments, salt flats, hot springs, and the dark corners of the oceans, the green world rose. Cyanobacteria spread across the seas, their chlorophyll, rich mats covering the planet's surface. The oxygen they produced began to build up in the atmosphere, leading to what scientists now call the Great Oxidation Event. It was both a catastrophe and a creation, a mass extinction for some, and a dawn of opportunity for others. The oxygen that suffocated the purple microbes would one day allow animals to breathe, fires to burn, and the ozone layer to form, shielding the Earth from harmful radiation. This was the turning point when Earth's environment began to resemble the world we know today. The blue of the oceans deepened, the skies turned brighter, and life started experimenting with complexity. The age of single-celled simplicity was giving way to the first steps toward multicellular evolution. The legacy of that shift lives on in every breath we take, every leaf that photosynthesizes, and every living thing that depends on oxygen. Yet, the victory of the green world didn't erase the purple one completely. The descendants of those ancient violet bacteria still exist, hidden in places too extreme for oxygen-loving life. They are nature's memory, a whisper of the time when Earth was an alien world, painted in light that glowed from within. These survivors are a reminder that evolution doesn't just build new things, it layers them like history written in color. The Great Green Takeover was not just a battle between pigments. It was the moment when life reshaped the entire planet, the atmosphere, the oceans, and the destiny of every organism that would come after. The green chlorophyll that now defines our forests, crops, and algae as the color of survival born from ancient competition, it turned a once purple world into the vibrant cradle of life we know today. If you could have looked at Earth before this transformation, you would have seen a soft, violet jewel drifting in space. But afterward, the planet became something new, a shining green world bursting with oxygen and potential. It was not only the birth of modern life, but the beginning of the air we breathe and the balance we depend on. The day Earth turned green was the day it truly came alive. Long before trees exhaled oxygen into the air and long before any creature took its first breath, Earth's skies were heavy and suffocating. The atmosphere was thick with carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrogen, a toxic blanket that trapped heat and smothered the planet in a dense orange haze. It was a time when the seas were home to nothing larger than a single cell, and the air was utterly alien to the lungs of any modern being. Yet in that murky, dangerous world, something extraordinary began to unfold, a quiet miracle that would transform the very nature of the planet itself. It began with microscopic architects, the cyanobacteria, simple organisms with an extraordinary gift. While earlier microbes absorbed sunlight using retinal pigments and produced no oxygen, these new life forms had discovered a more complex chemistry. They used chlorophyll to capture light and, in doing so, performed oxygenic photosynthesis. It was the most revolutionary process in Earth's early history. With every flicker of sunlight they absorbed, they split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen, releasing that oxygen as waste. What they didn't realize was that this waste product would change everything. At first, the oxygen had no place to go. It immediately reacted with the iron dissolved in the planet's oceans. The seas began to rust. Tiny particles of iron oxide, the same reddish-brown mineral that colors desert rocks today, sank to the seafloor, forming massive layers of iron-rich stone. These became the banded iron formations still visible in the oldest rocks on Earth. Each of those layers tells the story of the world's first great transformation, a record of how life began to alter the chemistry of the oceans and air. As cyanobacteria continued to multiply, oxygen slowly accumulated beyond what the oceans could absorb. It began leaking into the atmosphere, reacting with methane, a powerful greenhouse gas, and triggering a cascade of climatic changes. The skies, once thick and warm, started to clear. The orange haze faded, revealing the first glimpses of blue above the seas. But this was no peaceful shift. The methane that once kept the planet warm was disappearing, and Earth's temperature began to plummet. Some scientists believe this chain reaction led to the first global ice age, a frozen catastrophe that stretched across the continents and oceans alike. To the microbes that had lived for billions of years in an oxygen-free world, this new element was toxic. Oxygen was corrosive. It attacked their cell walls and disrupted their chemical balance. Entire microbial kingdoms vanished, victims of what would later be called the Great Oxidation Event. It was one of the most devastating mass extinctions in the planet's history, yet it also laid the foundation for everything to come. The oxygen didn't just kill, it also created. With more of it in the air, new reactions became possible. Ozone formed high in the atmosphere, creating a shield that absorbed the sun's deadly ultraviolet rays. This invisible layer allowed life to expand beyond the dark protection of the oceans and into shallower waters, the first step toward the colonization of land millions of years later. Oxygen also made energy use more efficient, enabling the evolution of complex multicellular organisms. In a sense, oxygen was the fuel that powered the next stage of evolution. As the world changed, so did its colors. The once violet oceans deepened into blue, the rusty red of oxidized minerals painted the continents. The green of chlorophyll became the dominant hue of life. Every shade told the story of transformation, a visual symphony written in the language of chemistry and light. Earth, which had once glowed like an alien amethyst, was now beginning to resemble the living world we recognize today. Yet, beneath the beauty of this new balance, the scars of the transition remained. Deep in salt flats, thermal vents, and oxygen-free sediments, some of the old purple and sulfur-based bacteria survived, clinging to existence in isolated refuges. They are the remnants of a forgotten era, life that remembers the time before oxygen, still thriving in the shadows of the modern world. Every breath you take today is a whisper from that ancient revolution. The air that fills your lungs was once poison to the creatures that first made it. The rust in Earth's oldest rocks, the color of the sky, even the possibility of fire, all are gifts of those microscopic engineers who reshaped the planet through light and time. It is strange to think that the same element that sustains us was once a deadly byproduct of life's earliest experiments. Yet that paradox is what makes Earth unique. Life created the conditions for its own evolution. It destroyed its old world to build a new one. The cyanobacteria did not just survive, they rewrote the planet's destiny. In doing so, they gave birth to the breath of life, the invisible thread that connects every living thing, from the smallest cell to the beating heart of humankind. Even after the great transformation that turned Earth from a purple planet into a green and oxygen-rich world, echoes of the ancient past never fully vanished. In the silent corners of our planet, hidden beneath the crust of modern civilization, fragments of that long-lost purple age still survive, tiny, persistent beings that have endured every cataclysm Earth has thrown at them. These are the purple bacteria, the living ghosts of the planet's first world, survivors of a time when life itself was only beginning to understand how to exist. To find them, you must travel to the edges of habitability, to salt, crusted lakes that shimmer in desert heat, to the boiling waters of volcanic springs, or to deep, oxygen-starved layers of the sea where sunlight fades into darkness. Here, in these isolated refuges, life continues much as it did billions of years ago. These bacteria are not fossils, yet they are more ancient than any bones or shells we've ever discovered. Their biology carries the memory of a time before oxygen, before forests, before even the first fish swam through the seas. They are living reminders of the purple Earth, using the same remarkable pigment, bacteriorhodopsin, that their ancestors once used to capture light. Unlike green plants that depend on chlorophyll, these microbes still rely on retinal-based chemistry, absorbing the green wavelengths of sunlight and reflecting purples and reds. The effect, when seen in great numbers, is mesmerizing. In some salt lakes, especially under certain light conditions, entire waterscapes glow in a luminous magenta hue. It's as if the surface of the Earth is remembering its own youth, showing us a fleeting glimpse of what it once looked like. These organisms are masters of endurance. When the rest of life turned toward oxygen and adapted to a breathable world, the purple bacteria retreated not in defeat but in defiance. They found refuge in the cracks of Earth's extremities, in places too salty, too hot, or too toxic for their oxygen-loving descendants. They became specialists in survival, thriving in conditions that mimic the very chaos of the early planet. Where oxygen would burn or destroy other forms of life, they flourish. Where radiation sears and temperatures soar, they persist. Their continued existence is not just a biological curiosity, it's a living link to the planet's oldest chapter, scientists studying these microbes have learned that their genetic makeup holds ancient clues about the chemistry of early life. By analyzing their light-harvesting pigments and energy processes, researchers can reconstruct how the first ecosystems functioned long before the invention of oxygenic photosynthesis. These bacteria are like biological time machines, carrying within them the evolutionary code that predates all known complexity. And perhaps even more astonishingly, they are still innovating. In some environments, purple bacteria live symbiotically with other microorganisms, forming layered communities that mirror ancient microbial mats, the very structures that once dominated the shallow oceans of the Archean world. Together, they recycle nutrients, share energy, and maintain delicate balances that echo the cooperative systems of life's earliest days. Watching these microscopic colonies under a microscope is like peering through a window into prehistory. Each flicker of light, each movement, is a fragment of the planet's first dance with existence. There is also something deeply poetic about their survival. The purple bacteria are proof that evolution doesn't erase its past, it hides it. Beneath the triumphs of green photosynthesis and complex oxygen-based life, there remains a parallel story of resilience and memory. These microbes didn't vanish when the oxygen came, they adapted by stepping aside, carving out their own niches where time moves differently. Their habitats, hypersaline pools, sulfurous springs, and underground aquifers, are like sanctuaries for the forgotten world. When scientists explore these environments today, whether in the salt flats of Bolivia, the Dead Sea, or the hydrothermal vents of the Pacific, they're not just studying extremophiles. They're encountering living storytellers, organisms that have witnessed nearly 4 billion years of change and refuse to surrender. Their simplicity hides a profound truth. Survival doesn't always mean conquering. Sometimes it means knowing how to disappear, how to wait, and how to endure in silence. Even now, as humans send probes to Mars and telescopes search the skies for exoplanets that might host life, these humble microbes guide the search. Because if life could thrive here, under the crushing heat and poisonous skies of early Earth, if it could endure the great oxidation and still glow in the darkness of salt and time, then life might exist almost anywhere. The purple bacteria are not just ancient survivors, they are the planet's oldest storytellers, still whispering the tale of a forgotten world, a world that glowed with alien color and endless potential. They are the living heartbeat of a history written in light, and through them, we glimpse the first moments when our planet began to breathe, billions of years before humans even existed to wonder if we're alone in the universe. Earth itself held a secret, a clue written in the colors of its earliest forms of life, when our planet still shimmered in haunting purple tones, when its oceans glowed beneath a dim sun. These strange, light-absorbing organisms were not just creating life, they were creating a pattern, a cosmic pattern. A biological fingerprint that may stretch far beyond our world and into the vast cold darkness of space. The idea is thrilling. If early Earth was once a purple planet, then other planets with life could be purple too. This is the heart of what scientists now call the mirror Earth hypothesis, the belief that worlds resembling our ancient home might shine with the same alien light, created by microbial life that uses pigments like retinal instead of chlorophyll. If this is true, then perhaps we have been searching for the wrong color all along. Maybe life in the universe isn't green, maybe it's purple. When astronomers search for life, they look for signatures, chemical markers in a planet's atmosphere, or unnatural patterns in how light reflects off its surface. Chlorophyll on Earth creates what's called the vegetation red edge, a unique signal that tells telescopes there's green photosynthesis happening below. But retinal, the pigment used by ancient purple bacteria, creates an entirely different signature purple edge, a shift in light that would make a planet gleam with violet tones when viewed from afar. Imagine this scene: a space telescope floating far from Earth focuses its powerful mirrors on a distant exoplanet, a tiny marble orbiting a distant star. The light it reflects back isn't green like our forests. Instead, it carries a mysterious purple shimmer. The scientists back home examine the data, puzzled at first, until they realize they've seen this exact signature before, here on Earth, buried deep in its primordial history. That moment of discovery could be the first time humanity looks into the cosmic mirror and sees ourselves. The most astonishing part: purple life may actually be more common than green life. Retinal-based photosynthesis is simpler and requires fewer evolutionary steps than chlorophyll. It could arise quickly on young planets where the environment resembles early Earth: low oxygen, high salt, intense radiation. That means countless worlds in our galaxy could be glowing softly in the same hues our planet once wore. We've always assumed Earth was unique, but the Purple Age reminds us that life is adaptable, inventive, and eager to bloom wherever there is light and water. This possibility changes how we think about our own beginnings. We aren't just descendants of an earthly story, we might be part of a universal one. The way life first learned to use sunlight here could be the same way it begins everywhere else. Those tiny microbes floating beneath ancient purple seas might hold a truth far bigger than themselves, that life in the universe is not a rare miracle, but a natural outcome, a cosmic habit. And so, every time we lift our eyes to the night sky, we may be unknowingly staring at worlds filled with living color. Worlds where simple organisms shimmer beneath alien oceans. Worlds waiting for someone to discover them. The search for life beyond Earth isn't only about finding aliens, it's about reconnecting with our most ancient ancestors, the first beings that turned light into survival. Maybe the first extraterrestrial life we identify won't be a creature with eyes or limbs or voices. Maybe it will be a glow, a signature of purple, a whisper across the stars saying, "You are not alone." Previous episode was the survival of ancient purple bacteria, living memories of Earth's first world. Missed it? Link in bio. Watch now and catch up on the full story. Next topic coming up, episode 7, Snowball Earth, the planet that froze solid. The entire world once turned to ice, oceans sealed, sunlight blocked, life hanging by a thread, yet evolution found a way to rise again. Thank you for traveling into the forgotten colors of our past. Drop a comment. Do you believe purple worlds are out there waiting? Hit that like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next chapter of Earth's impossible history is just beginning.